The new Royal Enfield Himalayan 452 was perhaps the worst kept secret of any motorcycle being introduced in 2023. I did a video on this bike way back in January of 2022, and now, almost 2 years later, it is being released. Is this the coveted unicorn motorcycle, the perfect blend of on and off-road performance from the super slab to the single track, a bike truly for all occasions? Well, we have most of the specs and plenty of footage, so to see if this 450 single hits the sweet spot, stay tuned. And as always, if you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the small channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. The original Royal Enfield Himalayan was a good first effort at an affordable adventure bike by a rapidly expanding company intent on becoming a major player in the worldwide big bike market. And by big bike, I mean anything over 250cc, which in most of the world is a good sized motorcycle. Although the old Himalayan specs were nothing to write home about, as is often the case, this did not tell the whole story. Sometimes a motorcycle that lags behind on the spec sheet just works well, be it in ease of use, character, or price. And the Himalayan was a surprisingly off-road capable and easy to ride adventure bike, which also happened to be extremely reasonably priced. But it did have 3 major points of criticism that people who owned them or rode them pointed out. The first was its lack of power, the second were its brakes, and the third was its weight. The first two were legit, as 24 horsepower, while being enough to get up to highway speed, was not enough to cruise at 120 km per hour all day and punch it up to 140 to make a quick pass when needed. It was enough to keep up, but that's it. The brakes were indeed the weakest point of the bike, as the 300mm front disc was spongy. Defenders of the bike pointed out that weaker brakes were better suited for off-road, which is true, but most adventure motorcycles spend most of their time on pavement. As for the weight, 439 pounds wet, that is almost equal to the Tenere 700's 452 pounds, but the Tenere has literally 3 times the horsepower of the older Himalayan. However, in the Himalayan's defense, that weight figure included tank guards and luggage rack. Add a luggage rack and engine guards to the T7 and suddenly it's significantly heavier too. Plus, with a low seat height, the Royal Enfield was way less top heavy. So has this new bike addressed the criticisms aimed at its predecessor? In power, yes. In braking, probably. And in weight? Not really, but that may not matter that much. So let's take a look at Royal Enfield's best bike yet. By far the biggest improvement is made in the engine department, as Royal Enfield introduces its first liquid-cooled engine, a 452cc single-cylinder motor which produces 40 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 30 pound-feet of torque at 5,500 RPM. This is a proper off-road power plant, as let's face it, thumpers give you the best luggability and traction when the surfaces get loose, and no more straining to reach highway speeds. Itchy boots hit 140 km per hour on a pre-production bike. The gearbox also gains a 6th gear and a slipper clutch, nice modern touches. The brakes have been upgraded with bi-bray units with a 320mm disc up front and a 270 in the rear, both significant improvements over the older model. The bike also offers ABS, which can be switched off on the rear wheel. So the engine, big upgrade, ditto the brakes. Now for the third criticism of the old model, the weight. Well, here the difference is not great at all, with the new bike weighing 432 pounds with a full tank, 7 pounds lighter than the old one. But what about the top heaviness? After all, the old bike's lower center of gravity made it feel lighter. Well, the seat height is up a bit. The older Himalayan had a very accessible 31.5-inch seat height. The new one comes with either a standard seat, which can shift between 33.3 and 32.5 inches, or a low seat which shifts between 32.5 and 31.7. At its lowest, the new bike basically equals the old Himalayan for the riders who like the confidence of reaching the ground easily. But for those who want that extra bit of legroom or view over the city traffic, the higher seat is available. The extra height of the bike is due to improvements in suspension and ground clearance, which bode well for an improved riding experience, especially off-road. The forks, which still have 7.9 inches of travel like the old model, are now 43mm Showa upside-down units rather than the spindly 41mm telescopic fork they replace. The Showa shock also has 7.9 inches of travel, a clear improvement over the 7.1 inches of the old unit. Ground clearance goes up from 8.6 to 9.1 inches, which is good as the old bike was a bit lacking in this regard. Wheels remain the 21 and 17 inch combo. I would have preferred 21/18 for more tire choices, but you can't have it all. Speaking of tires, they look road biased and are tube type on the initial models. However, tubeless tires and cross-spoked rims will be offered on future up-spec Western models. The frame is stiffer and lighter as the new engine is used as a stressed member. So this is definitely a modern bike, which is also reflected in the electronics. The new Himalayan comes with throttle-by-wire, which enables rider modes, performance and eco. Peak power is the same in both, but the eco has a gentler throttle response. Unfortunately, Royal Enfield did not equip this touring bike with cruise control, which would have been pretty cool. Can you imagine if the Himalayan had cruise while much more expensive twins like the Transalp, V-Strom 800 and Tenere 700 didn't? It would have been egg on the face of Honda, Suzuki and Yamaha. The Himalayan does have a pretty cool looking TFT dash with phone connectivity and map functionality, which will come in handy when touring. So, do we finally have the coveted unicorn? Excellent performance on and off-road, good reliability, and a reasonable price? Well, the performance on the road will be much improved with the additional horsepower. The new Himalayan will now have the juice to run with the KTM 390 Adventure, Honda CB500X, and the Kawasaki Versys 300X. Off-road, the footage of the bike indicates improvements over the older model, but remember that at 430 pounds, this is no enduro. Still, it may turn out to be one of the most off-road capable motorcycles in its class. Reliability is unknown, but the new engine is liquid-cooled, which will reduce some of the heating stresses that air-cooled engines are subjected to. Also, while 6 or 7 years ago Royal Enfield's reputation for reliability was sus, the company has really tightened up in this regard, to the point that in a Fortnite video, their bikes had the cleanest oil of any manufacturer after the first service. As for price, we don't know. The current Himalayan is very reasonably priced, starting at less than $5,500 US MSRP. But given the increase in performance and technology, expect a price hike for this new one. Something in the neighborhood of the KTM 390 Adventure, which costs $6,700 US or $7,400 Canadian. So, unicorn? Maybe for some, though personally, I'd want my unicorn to weigh closer to 350 pounds. Stay tuned to the channel for more unicorn-related content. It's interesting that manufacturers are starting to explore the smaller adventure bike market. As for the Himalayan 452, bravo Royal Enfield. This company has introduced more models than any other manufacturer in the last few years, from the twins to the 350s to this new shot across KTM's and Honda's bow. Ain't competition wonderful? What do you think of this new bike? Is this the bike you can downsize to from your big GS? Or is this the motorcycle that will get you and many other riders into adventure riding, Gore-Tex suit and all? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Happy adventures and may the spokes be with you.